Tutorial TV. Like, share and subscribe. Welcome to Noun Tutorial TV. Like, share and subscribe. Pol121, Pol122, Introduction to African Politics Summary. Almost 5 decades after that threshold, popularly referred to as the dash, it would amount to self-delusion to claim that African states today are free from the corrosive effects of European values, systems, and institutions. African Year of Independence. Dash remarked thus, in no other continent did national borders emerge so directly and intrinsically from the way the imperial powers delineated their spheres of control. Henry Kissinger. In the movement towards dash of African states, political parties were in the vanguard of that struggle. National independence. In the movement towards national independence of African states, dash were in the vanguard of that struggle. Political parties. The National Council of Nigeria and Cameroon, NCNC, was led by dash dash. Herbert Macaulay. NCNC means dash dash. National Council of Nigeria and Cameroon. Dash gave nationalist struggle a boost. Nnamdi Azikiwe. Ghana was formerly called dash dash. Gold Coast. In former Gold Coast, now Ghana, the struggle for independence was initiated by the dash dash. United Gold Coast Convention, UGCC. UGCC means dash dash. United Gold Coast Convention. CPP means dash dash. Convention People's Party. Dash broke away and formed the Convention People's Party, CPP. Kwame Nkrumah. Dash proclaimed positive action and won independence for Ghana in 1957. Kwame Nkrumah. Kwame Nkrumah proclaimed dash and won independence for Ghana in 1957. Positive action. Kwame Nkrumah broke away and formed the Convention People's Party, CPP, proclaimed positive action and won independence for dash in 1957. Ghana. Kwame Nkrumah broke away and formed the Convention People's Party, CPP, proclaimed positive action and won independence for Ghana in dash dash. 1957. SLNC means dash dash. Sierra Leone National Council. Dash formed the Patriotic Front to demand for self-government, and eventually led their countries in the immediate post-independence era. ZANU and ZAPU. In his study of political parties in French West Africa, Dash made a distinction between what he called patron and mass parties. Morgenthau. By Dash definition, patron parties were weakly organized, undisciplined, with little direct membership participation. Morgenthau's. By Morgenthau's definition, Dash were weakly organized, undisciplined, with little direct membership participation. Patron parties. Dash enjoined political leaders to take care of everyone regardless of party differences. Traditionalism. Traditionalism enjoined Dash leaders to take care of everyone regardless of party differences. Political. Traditionalism enjoined political dash to take care of everyone regardless of party differences. Leaders. Traditionalism enjoined political leaders to take care of everyone regardless of dash dash. Party differences. Dash dictated that government should alternate between the majority and the minority. Liberal democracy. Dash democracy dictated that government should alternate between the majority and the minority. Liberal. Liberal dash dictated that government should alternate between the majority and the minority. Democracy. Liberal democracy dictated that dash should alternate between the majority and the minority. Government. The first major feature of African politics is dash dash. The problem of leadership legitimacy. The first major feature of African politics is the problem of dash legitimacy. Leadership. The first major feature of dash politics is the problem of leadership legitimacy. African. The first major feature of dash is the problem of leadership legitimacy. African politics. The first major feature of African politics is the problem of leadership dash dash. Legitimacy. The first major feature of African politics is the problem of leadership legitimacy. Simply connotes wide acceptability of the government in power by the entire citizens. Legitimacy. Legitimacy simply connotes wide acceptability of the government in power by the entire citizens. According to in his book Political Man, legitimacy of a government is determined by three factors: how power is acquired, the performance or efficiency of government, and the level of freedom and welfare enjoyed by the citizens. SM, 1963, Lipset. Legitimacy simply connotes wide acceptability of the government in power by the entire citizens. According to SM, 1963, Lipset in his book Political Man, legitimacy of a government is determined by factors. 3. According to SM, 1963, Lipset in his book legitimacy of a government is determined by three factors: how power is acquired, the performance or efficiency of government, and the level of freedom and welfare enjoyed by the citizens. Political Man. According to SM, 1963, Lipset in his book Political Man, legitimacy of a government is determined by three factors: how power is acquired, the performance or efficiency of government, and the level of freedom and welfare enjoyed by the citizens. The book Political Man was authored by SM Lipset. In rules governing electoral competition are not followed. Africa. In Africa, rules governing electoral competition are not followed. True. A government that lacks is prone to have its policies misinterpreted, creates communication gaps between the government and the governed, and may not enjoy the benefits of feedback on its policies that can assist in policy re-evaluation and reformulation. Legitimacy. A that lacks legitimacy is prone to have its policies misinterpreted, creates communication gaps between the government and the governed, and may not enjoy the benefits of feedback on its policies that can assist in policy re-evaluation and reformulation. Government. In the extreme, government imposes a reign of terror on the citizens to force them into submission or acquiescence. Illegitimate. In the extreme, an illegitimate government imposes a on the citizens to force them into submission or acquiescence. Reign of terror. In the general elections in Kenya, incumbent President Mwai Kibaki manipulated the Electoral Commission to deny the opposition candidate, Raila Odinga of Orange Democratic Coalition, from emerging victorious. December 2007. In the December 2007 general elections in Kenya, incumbent President manipulated the Electoral Commission to deny the opposition candidate, Raila Odinga of Orange Democratic Coalition, from emerging victorious. Mwai Kibaki. In March Robert Mugabe reenacted the Kenya drama in Zimbabwe. 2008. In March 2008, reenacted the Kenya drama in Zimbabwe. Robert Mugabe has remained the bane of African politics. Corruption. Defines corruption as abuse, misuse, and disuse of power. Awolowo, 1966. Awolowo, 1966, defines as abuse, misuse, and disuse of power. Corruption. Awolowo, 1966, defines corruption as misuse and disuse of power. Abuse. Awolowo, 1966, defines corruption as abuse, and disuse of power. Misuse. Awolowo, 1966, defines corruption as abuse, misuse, and of power. Disuse. Forms of corruption in African politics include bribery and manipulation of electoral process, nepotism in award of contracts, and favoritism in dispensing patronage. Coined the word prebendalism. Richard Joseph, 2006, coined the word prebendalism. Richard Joseph, 2006, coined the word to describe a situation where an individual seeks a patron and leans on him in order to benefit from the privileges of the upper class. Prebendalism. Richard Joseph, 2006, coined the word prebendalism to describe a situation where an individual seeks a patron and leans on him in order to benefit from the privileges of the upper class. Coined the term politics of the belly. JF by Art. NIP means National Integrated Power Project. Ali Mazrui, 1997:7, identified leadership styles among African leaders. 5. Identified 5 leadership styles among African leaders. Ali Mazrui. Leader relies primarily on fear and instrument of coercion to assert his authority, and specialized in the use and/or threat of use of force to extract compliance from his fellow countrymen. Intimidatory. The leader is basically one who commanded neophilia reverence, a near father-like figure like Jomo Kenyatta and Nelson Mandela. Patriarchal. The leader of relied for his effectiveness on qualities of tactical accommodation and capacity to discover areas of compromise between otherwise antagonistic viewpoints. Reconciliation. Leader main drive was ideology, with a dose of charismatic qualities, which helped in mobilizing the populace in the direction of a particular social action mobilization. Leader is a low-key type who relied on efficiency rather than evocation, procedure rather than passion. Bureaucratic. Kwame Nkrumah preferred to be called Osage 4. Osage 4 means The Savior. Nyerere admired being called Nwelaimua. Admired being called Nwelaimua, the great teacher. Nyerere. Nwelaimua means the great teacher. Was of the view that the strongest is never strong enough to be master unless he transforms might into right and obedience into duty. J. Rousseau's. Another feature of African politics is the sit-tight syndrome. Is the desire and consistent refusal of rulers and leaders in Africa to leave office at the end of their tenure even when they had become unpopular. Sit-tight syndrome. Obafemi Awolowo described sit-tight syndrome in African politics as tenacity of office. Obafemi Awolowo described this virus in African politics as tenacity of office, which in turn makes the opposition parties to develop the tactics of pull him down syndrome. Beyond a lust for power, another cause of the sit-tight syndrome in Africa is corruption. The list of sit-tight African leaders is endless. The list of leaders is endless. Sit-tight African. The list of sit-tight African leaders is endless. True. In Omar Albert Bernard Bongo had been in power since 1967 Gabon. In Gabon, had been in power since 1967. Omar Albert Bernard Bongo. In Gabon, Omar Albert Bernard Bongo had been in since 1967. Power. In Gabon, Omar Albert Bernard Bongo had been in power since 1967. In Gabon, Omar Albert Bernard Bongo had been re-elected for about times. 7. Is a singular positive exception where Nelson Mandela graciously bowed out of office after completing a single tenure of 4 years. South Africa. South Africa is a singular positive exception where graciously bowed out of office after completing a single tenure of 4 years. Nelson Mandela. South Africa is a singular positive exception where Nelson Mandela graciously bowed out of office after completing a single tenure of years. 4. In Nigeria, as a serving military head of state was adopted by the then 5 registered political parties as their sole candidate, as a ploy to prolong his government. General Abacha. Being societies, African states are divided along segmental cleavages. Plural. Being plural societies, African states are divided along segmental cleavages. In every system, those who are in power face democratic opposition, who would normally replace them, either to change or modify existing policies. Political. In every political system, those who are in power face who would normally replace them, either to change or modify existing policies. Democratic opposition. In every political system, those who are in power face democratic, who would normally replace them, either to change or modify existing policies. Opposition. Identified three basic ways of assuming leadership positions, or what is popularly known as political legitimacy: legal, rational, traditional and charismatic. Max Weber. Max Weber identified basic ways of assuming leadership positions. 3. Max Weber, a German sociologist, identified three basic ways of assuming leadership positions, or what is popularly known as political legitimacy: legal, rational, traditional and charismatic. Max Weber is a sociologist. German. Max Weber is a German sociologist. Is a territorially or tribally defined community which existed before the intrusion of colonial rule, and led by traditional rulers and chiefs, who constituted traditional political elites. Traditional society. According to pre-colonial African societies had a rich tradition of political, economic, and social institutions that dealt with allocation of resources, lawmaking and social control. Mengistu, 2003. According to Mengistu, 2003, African societies had a rich tradition of political, economic, and social institutions that dealt with allocation of resources, lawmaking and social control. Pre-colonial. Explained that in a political system there must be a set of interactions resulting in the authoritative allocation of values. David Easton. David Easton explained that in a there must be a set of interactions resulting in the authoritative allocation of values. Political system. David Easton explained that in a political system there must be a set of resulting in the authoritative allocation of values. Interactions. David Easton explained that in a political system there must be a set of interactions resulting in the allocation of values. Authoritative. David Easton explained that in a political system there must be a set of interactions resulting in the authoritative allocation of values. The anthropologists made a primary distinction between a state and stateless societies. Colonial. The colonial made a primary distinction between a state and stateless societies. Anthropologists. The colonial anthropologists made a primary distinction between state and stateless societies. The idea of a chief in council is not new to Africa. True. A major feature of traditional Africa was of governance and authority. Decentralization. A major feature of traditional Africa was decentralization of governance and authority. A major feature of traditional Africa was decentralization of and authority. Governance. A major feature of traditional Africa was decentralization of governance and authority. In the W. E. Abraham insists that African palaver by which various opinions are arrived at after long and patient discussions are just as democratic as, if not more democratic, than the counting of heads, and making decisions based on majority votes. Mind of Africa. In the Mind of Africa, insists that African palaver by which various opinions are arrived at after long and patient discussions are just as democratic as, if not more democratic, than the counting of heads, and making decisions based on majority votes. W. E. Abraham. In the Mind of Africa, W. E. Abraham insists that African by which various opinions are arrived at after long and patient discussions are just as democratic as, if not more democratic, than the counting of heads, and making decisions based on majority votes. Palaver. The three fundamental principles of pre-colonial Africa as outlined by Leges, 2000, were, a. Curbing concentration of power in an institution or person, separation of powers. B. Averting the emergence of a rigid hierarchy, devolution of powers. C. Avoiding the settlement of disputes through adversarial procedures, alternative dispute resolution. Dash of lineage, kinship, and ethnic groups assured numbers of protection of rights of both the strong and weak. Membership. Dash dash, kinship, and ethnic groups assured numbers of protection of rights of both the strong and weak. Membership of lineage. Membership of lineage, dash dash, and ethnic groups assured numbers of protection of rights of both the strong and weak. Kinship. Membership of lineage, kinship, and dash groups assured numbers of protection of rights of both the strong and weak. Ethnic. Dash assured numbers of protection of rights of both the strong and weak. Membership of lineage, kinship, and ethnic groups. Participation of women in political institutions is limited in African political system. True. Africa was also portrayed as having made no contribution to world history. True. In a report on amalgamation in Nigeria, Dash wrote the Southern Protectorate was populated by tribes in the lowest stage of primitive savagery. Lord Luggard. In his dual mandate, Dash wrote further, Europe was in Africa for the mutual benefit of her own industrial classes and of the native races in their progress to a higher plane. Luggard. In Dash Nigeria, the 1804 Holy Jihad led by Uthman Dan Fodio. In northern Nigeria, the Dash Holy Jihad led by Uthman Dan Fodio. 1804 in northern Nigeria, the 1804 Dash led by Uthman Dan Fodio. Holy Jihad. In northern Nigeria, the 1804 Holy Jihad led by Dash Dash. Uthman Dan Fodio. The 1804 Holy Jihad led by Uthman Dan Fodio was forcefully disrupted by the British in dash dash. 1903 The 1804 Holy Jihad led by Uthman Dan Fodio was forcefully disrupted by the dash dash. British. Dash in 1914 seized upon a local feud to abrogate the treaty by fiat, marking the integration of the Egbas into the colonial administration. Luggard. Luggard in dash seized upon a local feud to abrogate the treaty by fiat, marking the integration of the Egbas into the colonial administration. 1914. Dash stated that colonialism invested chiefs with more power than they traditionally enjoyed in return for their support and cooperation. Hoekveld. Hoekveld, 1978:1071, stated that Dash invested chiefs with more power than they traditionally enjoyed in return for their support and cooperation. Colonialism. The introduction of Dash and culture introduced a more liberal value within the colonial milieu, a value that questioned the absolute grip of traditional rulers over their subjects. Western education. The introduction of Western education and Dash introduced a more liberal value within the colonial milieu, a value that questioned the absolute grip of traditional rulers over their subjects. Culture. The introduction of Western education and culture introduced a more liberal value within the Dash milieu, a value that questioned the absolute grip of traditional rulers over their subjects. Colonial. The African state today is a creation of Dash Dash. Imperialism. Dash argues that the African state, run by functionaries whose interests are closely tied with external forces, can hardly be expected to link itself with its institutional roots. Mengistu, 2003. What Dash achieved therefore was to displace traditional rulers from their primacy. Colonialism. What colonialism achieved therefore was dash dash. To displace traditional rulers from their primacy. What colonialism achieved therefore was to displace dash rulers from their primacy. What colonialism achieved therefore was to displace traditional rulers from their primacy. Traditional. What colonialism achieved therefore was to dash traditional rulers from their primacy. What colonialism achieved therefore was to displace traditional rulers from their primacy. Displace. What colonialism achieved therefore was to displace traditional dash from their primacy. Rulers. What colonialism achieved therefore was to displace dash from their primacy. Traditional rulers. What colonialism achieved therefore was to displace traditional rulers from their primacy. To coin the concept of mixed government to describe the trend in which traditional institutions are now accepted as occupying a second dimension of political space, behind the sovereign state. Richard Sklar, 1993. Richard Sklar, 1993, to coin the concept of to describe the trend in which traditional institutions are now accepted as occupying a second dimension of political space, behind the sovereign state. Mixed government. Richard Sklar, 1993, to coin the concept of mixed government to describe the trend in which traditional institutions are now accepted as occupying a second dimension of political space, behind the sovereign state. The Ghanaian constitution established a national House of Chiefs and restricted the state from appointing or refusing to recognize chiefs. 1992 The 1992 Ghanaian constitution established a and restricted the state from appointing or refusing to recognize chiefs. National House of Chiefs. The 1992 constitution established a national House of Chiefs and restricted the state from appointing or refusing to recognize chiefs. Ghanaian. In despite the association of many chiefs with the apartheid regime, the country's 1996 constitution recognizes and protects the institution, status, and role of traditional leadership, according to customary law. South Africa. The South African interim constitution of specifically provided for a constitutional monarchy in the KwaZulu-Natal province, to accommodate the powerful Inkatha Freedom Party, led by Chief Buthelezi. 1994 The South African Interim Constitution of 1994 specifically provided for a constitutional monarchy in the KwaZulu-Natal province, to accommodate the powerful Inkatha Freedom Party, led by Chief Buthelezi. In Uganda amended its constitution in order to legalize the coronation of the Kabaka of Buganda, Mutabatu. 1993 A body known as the and Eminent Persons on Peace and Unity in Nigeria was set up in the country to discuss issues that could threaten or disrupt national unity. Advisory Forum of Traditional Rulers. A body known as the Advisory Forum of Traditional Rulers and in Nigeria was set up in the country to discuss issues that could threaten or disrupt national unity. Eminent Persons on Peace and Unity. A body known as the Advisory Forum of Traditional Rulers and Eminent Persons on Peace and Unity in Nigeria was set up in the country to discuss issues that could threaten or disrupt national unity. A major factor why traditional institutions are considered a relic of the past is due to its undemocratic nature. Noted an increase in ethnic associations and solidarities in the wake of structural adjustment in Nigeria. Eghaza Osagi, 1995. Institutions have valuable characteristics that can assist democratic governance and promote development. Traditional have valuable characteristics that can assist democratic governance and promote development. Traditional institutions. Traditional institutions have valuable characteristics that can assist governance and promote development. Democratic. Traditional institutions have valuable characteristics that can assist democratic governance and promote development. Created modern nation states with defined boundaries and capitals. Foreign rule. Foreign rule created modern with defined boundaries and capitals. Nation states. Foreign rule created modern nation states with defined and capitals. Boundaries. Foreign rule created modern nation states with defined boundaries and capitals. Africans were introduced to which ironically equipped them with tools of resistance. Western education. The mandates under which former German colonies were assigned to victorious European nations stipulated that they should be governed as a sacred trust of civilization until they could stand on their own feet. League of Nations. Relative peace and security stimulated economic activity. True. The amalgamation of Nigeria took place in 1914 emptied the villages, populated the cities, increased mobility and urbanization. Western education. Western education emptied the dash dash. Villages, populated the cities, increased mobility and urbanization. Western education emptied the villages, populated the cities, dash and urbanization. Increased mobility. Western education emptied the villages, populated the cities, increased mobility, and dash dash. Urbanization. Dash argues that colonialism made Africans realize they are one. A sentiment was created on the African continent, a sentiment of oneness. Ali Mazrui. Ali Mazrui argues that Dash made Africans realize they are one. A sentiment was created on the African continent, a sentiment of oneness. Colonialism. Dash identified systems, process, and policy as three critical areas to view politics and assess government. Gabriel Amand et al., 2003. Gabriel Amand et al., 2003, identified dash dash, process and policy as three critical areas to view politics and assess government. Systems. Gabriel Amand et al., 2003, identified systems, dash and policy as three critical areas to view politics and assess government. Process. Gabriel Amand et al., 2003, identified systems, process, and dash as three critical areas to view politics and assess government. Policy. Gabriel Amand et al., 2003, identified systems, process, and policy as three critical areas to view politics and assess government. True. Dash is one of the dangerous legacies of colonial rule. Tribalism. Tribalism is one of the dangerous dash of colonial rule. Legacies. Tribalism is one of the dangerous legacies of dash dash. Colonial rule. Tribalism is one of the dangerous legacies of colonial rule. True. Tribes had existed before colonial rule. True. The word tribalism, according to the Dash Dictionary, was coined in 1886. Oxford English. The word tribalism, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, was coined in dash dash. 1886 dash refer to a condition where no national life, much less civilization, was possible. Tribalism. In Africa, tribalism has a negative connotation. True. The genocide of the ethnic Tutsi took place in the year dash dash. 1994. The 1994 genocide of the ethnic Tutsi and moderate Hutus was to redress balance of power which Chirantu favored the Tutsi. True. Dash promoted the view that every African belonged to a tribe just as every European belonged to a nation. Colonial policies. Dash is defined as distinct cultural units with a common language and a single social system. Tribe. Every tribe could stand on its own. True. Politics in Africa are not supported by values that strengthen representative government. True. To remain in power, most governments in Africa substitute dash for authority. Power. To remain in power, most governments in Africa substitute power for dash dash. Authority. To remain in power dash dash. Most governments in Africa substitute power for authority. Most African states are still struggling to provide for their citizens basic necessities of life. True. In terms of dash dash, there is widespread belief that the poor performance of most governments in Africa does not justify the huge amount spent to erect and support democratic structures. Cost-benefit analysis. In the words of dash dash, while those who have power are corrupted, those without it are degraded and alienated. Amand.et.al., 2005. Dash means a general feeling of allegiance, attachments, or loyalty to one's primordial group at the expense of the others. Ethnicity or tribalism. The dash is a group of people who are set off from the rest of the society as superior because of certain qualities they possess by virtue of ascription or achievements. Elite. Dash is by birth. Ascription. Ascription is by dash dash. Birth. Dash is by personally acquired traits. Achievement. Dash theory holds that in any organization only a small percentage of members hold the reign of political and administrative leadership. Iron law of oligarchy. For the Africans, the word dash provokes negative emotions and reactions because it is always asserted that where the label sticks, and is manifested in political and social relations, it constitutes an impediment to development. Tribe. Dash a political scientist sought to clarify the usage of the term tribe. Emanuel Wallstein, 1978. Emanuel Wallstein, 1978, sought to clarify the usage of the term tribe. Political scientist. Emanuel Wallstein, 1978, a political scientist sought to clarify the usage of the term tribe. Before contacts with Europeans, politics in Africa was described as traditional. The word primordial came into use when what is called modern. Was a major phenomenon in Africa for about a century, and during the period a dominated relationship was created between the metropolitan powers and African colonies. Colonialism. Is a form of imperialism. Colonialism. Colonialism is a form of imperialism. Colonialism is a form of imperialism. True. Colonialism represented a continuation of European encounter with, and penetration of Africa, after the era of slave trade, and what was described as legitimate trade. The basic driving force behind colonialism is economic. In his Towards Colonial Freedom, Nkrumah, 1947, identified the three fundamental doctrines in the philosophical analysis of imperialism as a. The doctrine of exploitation. B. The doctrine of trusteeship or partnership. C. The doctrine of assimilation. The partition of Africa was concluded in 1885 is defined as the policy by which the mother country, the colonial power, binds her colonies to herself by political ties with the primary object of promoting her own economic advantage to secure trading routes and safe ports. Colonialism. Witnessed the establishment of the first German colony at Angra Pequena in southwest Africa. 1884 was famous for its policy of indirect rule. Britain was famous for its policy of indirect rule. Pursued the policy of assimilation. France pursued the policy of assimilation. Treated her African colonies as an extension of the government in Lisbon. Portugal treated her African colonies as an extension of the government in Lisbon. According to colonialism entails the following: economic exploitation combines with political domination and the superimposing of European control over indigenous political authority. Cohen, 1973. According to Cohen, 1973, entails the following: economic exploitation combines with political domination and the superimposing of European control over indigenous political authority. Colonialism. Is a system of economic exploitation, the alienation of Africans from their lands, the enactment of chieftaincy and mineral ordinances, and the encouragement of cash crops. Colonial rule. The selective construction of railways and roads were meant to serve objectives. Colonial. Nkrumah, 1947, listed what the colonial powers did to sustain this economic objective. A. Colonies were made non-manufacturing dependencies. B. Colonial subjects were consciously prevented from acquiring the knowledge of modern means and techniques for developing their own industries. C. Colonial subjects were made simple producers of raw materials through cheap labor. D. Colonies were prohibited from trading with other nations except through the mother country. The partition of Africa at in 1884/85 was largely a political exercise. Berlin. The partition of Africa at Berlin in was largely a political exercise. 1884/85. Discovered River Niger. Mango Park said a gate is open to every commercial nation to enter from west to the eastern extremes of Africa. Mango Park. The major party in Rhodesia which always won the settler general election was the Rhodesian Front Party, and was formerly called the Dominion Party. ZAPU means Zimbabwe African People's Union. ZANU means Zimbabwe African National Union. Zambia and Malawi became independent in the year 1964. The first African was nominated to the Gold Coast Legislative Council in 1888. The first African was nominated in Kenya was in 1944. UDI means Unilateral Declaration of Independence. The assurance of British support emboldened Ian Smith to make a unilateral declaration of independence, UDI, for Southern Rhodesia on November 11, 1965. The assurance of British support emboldened Ian Smith to make a for Southern Rhodesia on November 11, 1965. Unilateral Declaration of Independence, UDI. In March the OAU had earlier passed a resolution requesting Britain not to hand over power to the foreign minority in Rhodesia. 1965 OAU means Organization of African Unity. Observed that colonialism established the state as the source of economic development, which was later transformed by African leaders into arena for managing and manipulating political, class, conflict. Berman, 1934. Introduced a modern system of taxation. Colonialism. Colonialism introduced a modern system of taxation. Colonialism is one of the most important events in international relations. True. The partition of Africa at the Berlin Conference was held in Germany between November 1884 and February 1885. To the Europeans, simply means national feeling, as was demonstrated in the German and Italian unification in the second half of the 19th century. Nationalism. A is a political institution. State. A is an intangible, sociological concept. Nation. A is a fusion of the nation, into a state. Nation-state. The are those immediate spontaneous movements of resistance led by the likes of Haja of Pavo in British, and Seymour Dower in French territories. Traditionalists. The are the separatist religious movements led by Reverend James Johnson aimed at preventing the white man from controlling the religious beliefs of the African people. Syncretic movements. According to Esadebi, 1978:88, separatism began to manifest in churches in West and South African churches as from 1870s. According to Esadebi, 1978:88, began to manifest in churches in West and South African churches as from 1870s. Separatism encouraged the transformation of Africa from subsistence to a money-based economy. Colonialism. Colonialism encouraged the of Africa from subsistence to a money-based economy. Transformation. Colonialism encouraged the transformation of Africa from subsistence to a economy. Money-based. Colonialism encouraged the transformation of Africa from to a money-based economy. Subsistence. The first Pan-African Congress held in 1919. Paris. The second Pan-African Congress held in London in 1921. The third Pan-African Congress held in 1923. London. The fourth Pan-African Congress held in New York in 1927. The fifth Pan-African Congress held in 1945. Manchester. The first Pan-African Congress held in Paris in 1919. The second Pan-African Congress held in 1921. London. The third Pan-African Congress held in London in 1923 The Fourth Pan-African Congress held in in 1927. New York. The Fifth Pan-African Congress held in Manchester in 1945 The West African Students' Union was formed in 1925 The West African Students' Union was formed in 1925 by Leta Po-Solanke. The was formed in 1925 by Leta Po-Solanke. West African Students' Union. Basically, there are ideal types of approaches open to any colonial people struggling for independence. 2. NCBW means National Congress of British West Africa. NNDP means Nigerian National Democratic Party. Missionaries were not allowed to build schools until 1943 is not a single action which can be completed at once and celebrated annually. Liberation. And decolonization process in African colonies took different forms. Nationalism. Nationalism and process in African colonies took different forms. Decolonization. Nationalism and decolonization process in African colonies took different forms. True. Is a policy by which a foreign power binds territories to herself by political ties with the primary object of promoting her economic advantage. Neocolonialism. The concept of was developed to describe the phenomenon where the attainment of political independence by African states was not accompanied with economic independence. Neocolonialism. Kwame Nkrumah, 1962:1, identified doctrines of colonialism. 3. Kwame Nkrumah, 1962:1, identified three doctrines of colonialism as the doctrine of exploitation, the doctrine of trusteeship or partnership, and the doctrine of assimilation. The era of was that of direct political domination, economic exploitation, and cultural imperialism. Colonial domination. The era of colonial domination was that of economic exploitation, and cultural imperialism. Direct political domination. The era of colonial domination was that of direct political domination, and cultural imperialism. Economic exploitation. The era of colonial domination was that of direct political domination, economic exploitation, and cultural imperialism. The era of colonial domination was that of direct political domination, economic exploitation, and cultural imperialism. Is a form of neocolonial dependency. Neocolonialism. Neocolonialism is a form of dependency. Neocolonial. Neocolonial mentality was not accidental, it was deliberately ingrained in the consciousness of African nationalism. Basil Davidson, 2013, called it to enable neocolonialists retain levers of interest and influence. Advisory democracy. SAP means Structural Adjustment Program. Described SAP as the highest stage of neocolonialism, because it was an attempt to recolonize African countries. Iwerever described as the highest stage of neocolonialism, because it was an attempt to recolonize African countries. SAP. Iwerever described SAP as the highest stage of, because it was an attempt to recolonize African countries. Neocolonialism. The military aspect of triple neocolonial strategy was speedily effected in the early 1960s. NATO means North Atlantic Organization. Emerged on the world scene in the post-World War II era. Multinational corporations. Multinational corporations emerged on the world scene in the post-era. World War II. Multinational corporations emerged on the world scene in the post-World War II era. True. Has been consistently promoted as a means of promoting growth and development in Africa. Aid Program. Abon, 1977, 139, grouped the major characteristics of underdevelopment under headings. 5. Abon, 1977, 139, Group the major characteristics of underdevelopment under 5 headings, economic, agricultural, demographic, cultural, political, and technological characteristics. Dissected development into the economic, social, and political aspects. Noli, 1981:29. Noli, 1981:29, dissected development into the social and political aspects. Economic. Noli, 1981:29, dissected development into the economic, and political aspects. Social. Noli, 1981:29, dissected development into the economic, social, and aspects. Political. Kwame Nkrumah blazed the trail as the first black African colony to attain political independence on March 5, 1957. Ghana. Kwame Nkrumah's Ghana blazed the trail as the first black African colony to attain political independence on March 5, 1957. The doctrine of African socialism was popular in the immediate era. Post-colonial. The doctrine of African socialism was popular in the immediate post-colonial era. True. A major principle of African socialism is that man has no distinct personality separate from that of society, his destiny or future is inseparable from that of the society. The adoption of African socialism has inevitably encouraged African leaders to promote a one-partly dominant regime, a phenomenon which C. Kauturi once described as democratic centralism. In views, communalism is the socio-political ancestor of socialism. Nkrumah's. In Nkrumah's views, is the socio-political ancestor of socialism. Communalism. In the principles underlying communalism are given expression in modern circumstances. Socialism. In Julius Nyerere eventually legalized TANU as the sole party for the newly united Tanzania. 1965. In 1965, eventually legalized TANU as the sole party for the newly united Tanzania. Julius Nyerere. In Kenya effectively became a one-party state. 1982. In 1982, effectively became a one-party state. Kenya. In 1982, Kenya effectively became a party state. 1. CPP means Convention People's Party. One-party system can help in achieving national integration. True. Systems generate instability and turmoil. Two-party and multi-party. APC means All People's Congress. POGR means President's Own Guard Regiment. Occurs when the military supplants a civilian government that is committed to radical social and economic reforms that will be to the detriment of the wealthier classes in society. Veto coup. Occurs when the military intervenes to preempt power passing to a revolutionary or radical government. Anticipatory coup. Is when the military itself carry out fundamental restructuring of the state and society, and introduces a new ideological foundation. Reforming coup. Is the tendency of military officers to emulate their colleagues who have successfully staged coups in neighboring countries. Psychological/contagious effect. Theory attributes military coups to foreign agents like the American Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, and powerful multinational corporations. International conspiracy. CIA means Central Intelligence Agency. Is a concept that virtually defies definition. Democracy. The United Nations was founded in 1945 in African states occupied more than a quarter of the UN seats. 1961 is a system of relationships that prevail among state actors during a particular period. World Order. AGOA means African Growth and Opportunity Act. NEPAD means New Partnership for African Development. APRM means African Peer Review Mechanism. Dash is the winner of the Nobel Prize for Economics in 1974. Gunnar Myrdal. Gunnar Myrdal won Nobel Prize for Economics in dash dash. 1974 African states are new entrants into world scene because dash dash. They are products of post-1945 decolonization process. Dash argues that democratic transition tends to widen international disparities of wealth and with far-reaching implications for a nation's foreign policy. Goldstein. HIPC means dash dash. Heavily independent poor countries. CEDAW means dash dash. Commission on the Status of Women. Dash represents the first international treaty dealing with the rights of women in global context. CEDAW. FLOSAW means dash dash. Forward-looking strategies for the advancement of women. ACPIR means dash dash. African Charter on Human and People's Rights. The dash Beijing Declaration demanded for 30% women representation in government. 1995 two international conferences were called in dash and 1995. 1985 two international conferences were called in 1985 and dash dash. 1995 two international conferences were called in dash dash. 1985 and 1995. Dash brought about a change in the social structure of the African society. Colonialism. Dash in 1971 was the last economically developed colonies, EDC, to allow female suffrage. Switzerland. Switzerland in dash was the last economically developed colonies, EDC, to allow female suffrage. 1971 in dash New Zealand was the first country to recognize the right of women to vote. 1893 in 1893 dash was the first country to recognize the right of women to vote. New Zealand. The term gender derives from the Latin noun gender, which means dash dash. Kind or group. In the world today, the dash gender has always been considered the weaker of the human race. Female. In the world today, the female dash has always been considered the weaker of the human race. Gender. On February 11, Nelson Mandela was released from prison after 27 years of incarceration. 1990 On February 11, 1990 was released from prison after 27 years of incarceration. Nelson Mandela. On June the state of emergency in South Africa, excluding Natal Province, was lifted. 8 in Frederick de Klerk became South African president. 1989 In 1989, became South African president. Frederick de Klerk. The farthest the could go during the Cold War era was when in 1975 it equated Zionism in Israel with racism in South Africa. UN. The farthest the UN could go during the era was when in 1975 it equated Zionism in Israel with racism in South Africa. Cold War. The farthest the UN could go during the Cold War era was when in it equated Zionism in Israel with racism in South Africa. 1975 In December Cuban and South African troops withdrew from Namibia. 1988 In March Namibia became independent under the leadership of Sam Nujoma, effectively marking the end of colonialism in Africa. 1989 In December 1988, troops withdrew from Namibia. Cuban and South African. In December 1988, Cuban and South African troops withdrew from Namibia. In March 1989, became independent under the leadership of Sam Nujoma. Namibia. In March 1989, Namibia became independent under the leadership of, effectively marking the end of colonialism in Africa. Sam Nujoma. Year marked the end of colonialism in Africa 1989. SWAPO means Southwest African People's Organization. POC means Pan-African Congress. In a rare show of solidarity, African states using the platform provided by the OAU backed the radical MPLA and succeeded in securing independence for Angola, From Portuguese rule in dash dash. 1976 South Africa challenged UN's action but the International Court of Justice, ICJ, in dash dash. 1971 in dash dash, the UN General Assembly terminated South Africa's mandate over Namibia, and placed the country under the control of a newly created United Nations Council for Namibia. 1966 in dash dash, a group of disenchanted ANC members broke away to form the more militant Pan-African Congress, which had a military wing. 1959 The word apartheid was reportedly first used in dash by Jan Smuts. 1917 dash became South African Prime Minister in 1919. Jan Smuts. Jan Smuts became South African Prime Minister in dash dash. 1919 dash is partially a legacy of British colonialism, which introduced pass law in the Cape Colony during the 19th century. Apartheid. ICJ means dash dash. International Court of Justice. The statement that history of all societies is a history of class struggle between the haves and have-nots is credited to dash dash. Karl Marx. These are the examples of problems of politics and failure of African government except dash dash. Ensuring peace. These problems were created in Africa by the colonial rule, except dash dash. Self-reliance. The only difference between the Hutus and Tutsi is that Hutus were agriculturalists while Tutsi were dash dash. Pastoralists. The capital of Ghana is dash dash. Accra. These are external factors that aided nationalist movement except dash dash. Commonwealth of Nations. James Coleman categorized the movement for independence into the following except dash dash. Revolutionists. The country called Southern Rhodesia under the colonial period is now known as dash dash. Zimbabwe. Tanganyika is said to be the present-day dash dash. Tanzania. Kwame Nkrumah contended that neocolonialism is said to be the last stage of dash dash. Imperialism. The overriding priority of colonial administration was to make the colonies dash self-supporting. Colonialism created a bourgeois class which Nkrumah called dash dash. African bourgeoisie. Post-colonial dependency, which most African states currently face, was described by Nkrumah as dash dash. Neocolonialism. Nepotism in award of contracts proposes dash dash. Corruption. Political parties were the prime force in the struggle for Africa's dash dash. Independence. In dash dash, the ANC struggled, not for independence, but for majority rule from the apartheid regime. South Africa. In Zimbabwe, to demand for self-government, both ZANU and ZAPU formed the patriotic front called dash dash. ZANU-PF Awolowo in 1947 described Nigeria as a mere dash expression. Geographic. Which of these dash connotes wide acceptability of the government in power by the entire citizens? Popular legitimacy. The following factors, ethnicity, language, religion, and elitism considered as primordial hold sway in dash dash. Africa. The popular definition of democracy as government of the people, by the people and for the people is offered by dash dash. Abraham Lincoln. C.I.A presupposes dash dash. Central Intelligence Agency. One of these first-generation African leaders fondly called Nwalimu is also known as dash dash. Julius Nyerere. Democratic Republic of Congo, formerly Zaire, was colonized by one of these European countries dash dash. Belgium. The dash system displaced the primacy of traditional rulers. Colonial. The amalgamation of the Southern and Northern Protectorate was by dash in dash year. Sir Luggard, 1914. The defunct Organization of Africa Unity led some Africa states to break diplomatic ties with Britain over dash dash. Rhodesia. The abbreviation, ICJ means dash dash. International Court of Justice. The word apartheid was reportedly first used by Jan Smuts. The nature and character of colonialism entails all of these except dash dash. Cultural assimilation. Question: one of the following political parties secured independence for Gold Coast, later renamed Ghana, in 1957? Convention People's Party. Dash is popularly referred to as the African Year of Independence. 1960. The West African Pilot was a popular anti-colonial newspaper in Nigeria. One of the following African countries did not practice one-party system in the 1960s? Nigeria. The idea of democratic centralism was popularized by one of the following first-generation African political leaders? Sekou Touré. The type of democracy that was practiced in pre-colonial Africa was called communalism. The first agitation against imposition of taxes during the colonial period in western Nigeria occurred in the famous Abeokuta riots. The partitioning of the African continent into colonial territories was carried out at Conference Berlin. The Ashanti was a pre-colonial ruler in Gold Coast. One of the followings was not a traditional African nationalist? Nnamdi Azikiwe. One of the followings is a program of the African Union? NIPAD. One of the following scholars did not write about democracy? Alan Greenspan. In the First Republic 1960–1966 Nigeria practiced parliamentary system. The Nigerian official opposition leader the First Republic was Chief Obafemi Awolowo. In Ghana Kwame Nkrumah was popularly called Oshajiefor. The campaign for tenure extension by the Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo was thwarted by the National Assembly. What is popularly known as the Mandela option suggests one term in office. One of the following African leaders was not caught by the opium of Sid-Tite syndrome? Nelson Mandela. One of these institutions is not directly involved in the impeachment process under the Nigerian constitution? Mass media. One of these African countries has not witnessed a military coup? South Africa. According to Kwame Nkrumah, neocolonialism is said to be the last stage of imperialism. Tanganyika is said to be the present-day Tanzania. The country called Southern Rhodesia under the colonial period is now known as Zimbabwe. James Coleman categorized the movement for independence into the following except revolutionists. These are external factors that aided nationalist movement except Commonwealth of Nations. The only difference between the Hutus and Tutsi is that Hutus were agriculturalists while Tutsi were pastoralists. These problems were created in Africa by the colonial rule except self-reliance. The bane to African politics is corruption. The conference was a forum for partitioning of African territories. Berlin. Colonialism is nothing but political subjugation. The primordial politics in Africa revolved largely on ethnic politics. Traditional Africa society was known for decentralization of governance. The agitation for political independence in Africa led to the formation of political parties. The modern form of colonialism in Africa is imperialism. Neocolonialism is a form colonial dependency. Politically African perspective of democracy is Eurocentric. French policy of was entrenched its colonies association. Nigeria adopted the structural adjustment program in 1986. The first military coup in Africa was carried out in Egypt. Pan-Africanists fought for political in Africa emancipation. The first political party in Nigeria was formed in 1923. African development should be dynamic and self-reliant. Military into African politics was unconstitutional incursion. Nkrumah's view is that is the socio-political ancestor of socialism communalism. The popular definition of democracy as government of the people, by the people and for the people is offered by Abraham Lincoln. C.I.A means Central Intelligence Agency. One of these first-generation African leaders was fondly called Mwalimu Julius Nyerere. Democratic Republic of Congo, formerly Zaire, was colonized by one of these European countries. Belgium. System displaced the traditional ruler of their primacy colonial. The amalgamation of the southern and northern protectorate was by in year. Sir Luggard, 1914. The defunct Organization of Africa Unity led some Africa states to break diplomatic ties with Britain over Rhodesia. The history of all societies is a history of class struggle between the haves and have-nots. This statement was made by Karl Marx. The only difference between the Hutus and Tutsi is that Hutus were agriculturalists while Tutsi were pastoralists. The Atlantic Charter was signed between Winston Roosevelt and Winston Churchill. If there is any continuity in African political structure, it is only from to colonial to post-colonial. Kwame Nkrumah broke away from political party and formed political party. UGCC and CPP. Was the first black African state to attain political independence. Ghana. The book entitled How Europe Underdeveloped Africa was written by Walter Rodney. The first black African Secretary General of the United Nations, UNO, is Kofi Annan. In Ghana, the failure of opposition to change the C.P. government through democratic means led to a military coup in the country in February 1966. The Arab Spring that led to the overthrow some Hittite North African leaders started in Tunisia. The last white president of South Africa who handed over to Dr. Nelson Mandela in 1994 was F.W. de Klerk. The apartheid policy in South Africa while it lasted was based and justified on racism. The type of democracy that was practiced in pre-colonial Africa was called communalism. Wrote about prebendaries as a major bane of Nigerian politics. Richard Joseph. The first military coup took place in Nigeria on January 15, 1966. The meeting to reconcile Ojukwu and Gowon before the outbreak of civil war in Nigeria took place in Ghana Owerri. In 1965, TANU was legalized as the sole political party in Tanzania. The title Mwalimu used by a Tanzanian president means the great teacher. The African leader known as Mwalimu was Julius Nyerere. The meaning of the popular title Osajifo given to Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana means the Redeemer. Gamal Abdul Nasser was the post-independence president of Egypt. The meaning of the political doctrine known as Ujamaa, conied by President Nyerere is familyhood. South Africa and a group of countries in that region are called Southern Africa. Operations of the ECOMOG is limited to member states. ECOWAS. The Charter establishing the ECOMOG gave it the mandate only for peacekeeping. The military outfit known as ECOMOG was established as the military wing of ECOWAS. Most post-independence African leaders embraced one-party system in line with their belief in concept of African socialism. Nigerians rejected the Structural Adjustment Program, SAP, because it was seen as an IMF instrument to control the Nigerian economy. Nigeria joined the United Nations as 99th member on October 7, 1960. The Gambia Independence Act of was an act of Parliament of the United Kingdom. Nigeria belonged to the group, which joined with the Radical Bloc to form the OAU in 1963. Conservative. The former Rhodesia is now known as dash dash. Zimbabwe. At the early stage of colonialism, present Ghana was known as Dash Coast. Gold Coast. In 1979, Nigeria nationalized the assets of Dash Petroleum to prevent Nigerian oil from getting to the apartheid regime. British. The popular saying "seek first the kingdom of politics, every otters shall be added again to it" is credited to a Pan-Africanist called Dash Dash. Nkrumah. Some measures taken by African leaders to eradicate the vestiges of colonialism from African continent is known as Dash process. Decolonization. The two groups that formed the OAU belong to two different ideological divides, conservative and dash dash. Radical. The Casablanca Bloc, which emerged in 1961, was known as Dash Group. Radical. One of the two major blocs that led to the formation of the Organization of African Unity, now O, was the Dash Groups. Monrovia. African definition and conceptualization of democracy are based on Western dash and orientation. Culture. The second bombardment of Lagos in 1861, leading to the annexation that changed Lagos territory to become dash dash. British colony. In most African countries, the process of imperialism and colonialism started with slave trade and missionary dash dash. Evangelism. A country is dash only if there is no any form of foreign interference in her domestic affairs. Sovereign. Nigeria was not a republic until dash dash. 1963 scholars regard the post-independence relationship between African countries and their former imperial powers as dash dash. Neocolonialism. The British first got African traditional rulers involved in administration through the policy of dash indirect rule. The traditional elites were initiated into politics by the British when dash were created each in both the northern and western regions of Nigeria. House of Chiefs. Nigeria became a dash state, in recognition of her role against colonialism and apartheid regime in the southern Africa. Frontline. The major player in the economic activities is dash dash. Nigeria. In dash India gained independence from Britain. 1947 In 1947 dash gained independence from Britain. India. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights was made in the year dash dash. 1948 The first post-apartheid South African president was dash dash. Nelson Mandela. The type of democracy that was practiced in pre-colonial Africa was called dash dash. Communalism.